Welcome to the Gridiron Report, your Lions First All Detroit Sports podcast. Today is Saturday, January 4th, and Detroit is coming off a gutsy, albeit meaningless game against the San Francisco 49ers, winning 40-34. We have that game to get into. We have the upcoming one that's essentially a playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings coming up this week, tomorrow even, to get into, and everything in between. Got lots of other Detroit sports, got some news surrounding around the podcast to touch into. So we have so much to get into. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and take care of some house cleaning a little bit. Like I said, some exciting news surrounding around the pod. So everyone, if you've been tuning into these, you've either been tuning in for quite some time and going all the way back to the PSF Pro Sports Fan app days, in which we kind of started the podcast on. If you don't recall, that was a chat room in which we were doing these live episodes and posting them on there. That app ended up having a little bit of some bugs and technical issues, so we jumped over to Twitter Spaces. We are now going to be staying on Twitter Spaces to go live every Tuesday night. But on top of that, we're excited to be available on anywhere essentially you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's essentially going to be an RSS podcast. So after our live episodes, you can tune in, watch us live. If you aren't able to catch that, you can tune in. It'll be every Wednesday, the day after, when you can watch and re-listen to all of our podcasts and be involved in the conversation that way. In addition to that, we also have a hotline in which you can call, leave a voicemail, ask us some questions, bring up a topic you want us to discuss each week. In segment 4, we will be getting into those voicemails. We'll play them here on the podcast, talk about them a little bit, and kind of use anything you guys have to say to get involved in the conversation. So a lot of exciting things coming up here shortly as we kind of move into it. I know this week has been a little bit different with the holidays and our recording schedule, and we're trying to get this new process rolling. So bear with us a little bit, but hopefully over the next few weeks we can sort of start to get everything ironed out. And then the last thing I'll say in the terms of house cleaning is that I know we are obviously going to be going into week 18 with the Lions. We have playoff games to be talking about. We'll obviously be recording through all those. But the goal is to continue to record and post into the offseason of the Lions. Like I said in the intro, we're a Lions First podcast, but we're all Detroit sports. So what we probably will do, and this is subject to change a little bit, Kiel and I will have to talk about it and moving forward, probably change the cadence of it. I know we're coming to you guys live every week. Probably change it to maybe every other week. But we're going to touch on other sports. We're going to dabble into the Tigers, the Red Wings, and the Pistons a little bit. We'll slowly start integrating them into our weekly episodes as well. So as soon as we get into offseason for the Lions, we still have news and stuff to talk about, responding around the Lions, but we'll have other sports as well. So really excited for those updates and kind of as we go from here.
Yeah, man, dude, I'm super pumped. And I think first and foremost, I mean, big shout out to you, Tyler, for doing all the heavy lifting to be able to get us, not only, on Twitter every week, but now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you might find your podcast. We should be on there. So yeah, just a huge shout out to you, man. And I'm pumped. I'm really pumped that, we can continue to grow this thing. Of course, there's, the Lions have a lot of awesome momentum right now, but as you said, we could talk about all Detroit sports, all day and night, basically. So, yeah, I'm super pumped, man, and huge shout out to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like I said, we can get you guys as involved as you guys will. Honestly, like I said, we have that voicemail. We'll have the voicemail number in the show notes. I'll also shout it out at the end of the episode. Give a call. It can be anything about any of the Detroit sports. It can be anything miscellaneous. We will probably do a little bit of screening before we actually come on. At least one of us will, so it's not completely out of pockets, and the other one maybe can catch it. Get a little bit of a live reaction. So make sure you guys call in that one, leave your voicemail, and anything you guys want to see us talk and cover on. We'll probably play them. We got to find out a way technically, but we'll probably play them live on the pod as well. So with all that being said, we got a lot to talk about with the Lions. As I kind of started off, we are coming off a gutsy win against the San Francisco 49ers in San Fran. Although just because of the way the Vikings game ended up, that earlier or last weekend, it was meaningless in a sense. It was one of those ones that we kind of thought maybe there was a chance it was going to be meaningless, and maybe Dan Campbell was going to rest a lot of his starters. So it was meaningless in that regard. But I think Dan Campbell kind of said it perfectly. Like, we don't rest our guys. We love this. We love this thing. We love a game of football. We love being violent. There was no chance they were going to rest the guys. So even though it was technically meaningless based on the seeding and stuff like that, still a gutsy win that I think was important for morale.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, meaningless on paper, but you better believe that this game meant a hell of a lot to Dan Campbell and to this entire Detroit Lions team. I mean, first and foremost, a revenge game from the NFC Championship game last year, where you say what you want, but I mean, the Lions coughed that game up. They had every chance to win it. And the second half obviously didn't go the way we went. So, of course, it's a revenge game. You look back and just the series history, and the Niners had won so many games, consecutively. I think 9 out of the last 10 against the Lions. So yeah, I mean, this team, they wanted that win, and it's also a massive win for momentum. And of
Yeah.
course, the no injuries. We'll talk about that. That's huge as well. But I mean, this team needed some momentum. They coming off that Bills loss, and then yeah, they grabbed a big win at Chicago. But the momentum is still it's huge. Picking up wins this late in the season. So yeah, I mean it was huge. Love the way the boys played. I know we'll probably jump right into the offense. And they came to play per usual. I would love to hear your thoughts, but I think just first and foremost for me, Jared was once again just incredible, completing nearly 77% of his passes, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he took care of the ball once again.
Yeah, it seems like you take out maybe two games. Definitely take out the Houston game. Take out maybe like one or maybe two outside of that game in which Goff wasn't like he was just kind of average. He's been absolutely fantastic the entire year. Like you said, 26 for 34, passer rating of 132.4. I don't have his average passer rating for the season in front of me, but it's got to be right around 130. I mean, he's just taking care of the ball and playing absolutely fantastic, and he's just hitting on all cylinders with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, we talked about, honestly after the Bucks game that like Jared Goff is not a quarterback that is made to throw the ball 50 times. And him and Ben Johnson are on the exact same page. He's only throwing 34 times. It's right around the 25 to 35 range each week. And each week it's kind of right in his wheelhouse. He's taking care of the ball. He's not turning it over. He's getting into all his guys 3 tugs, really spreading out the offense. Obviously, when Monty went down, we had the luxury of having that double-headed, backfield in Monty and Gibbs. So it was a little bit of concern. We touched on it last week. Gibbs obviously just kind of took the load and was able to carry it completely fine. He did it last week. He did it again this week. They did get Craig Reynolds involved a little bit, which was nice. Everyone loves Craig. He was a Hard Knocks star. Was that like 2 years ago when they were talking about he was just kind of the Dan Campbell gritty guy, and they're talking about whether they technically maybe could cut him just because he was on the fringe, but everyone in the coaches room was just saying like, do we like, he's a guy we preach and want, like, do we want to cut him? And so it's good to see Craig finally get just a little bit of game time. But if anything else, the way Gibbs was able to run the ball just proved again that we'll be completely fine until Monty comes back, if he comes back. I think we touched on it last week. Monty went to see like 3 or 4 different doctors. Finally, found one that said like maybe his season isn't over. It kind of, I don't know how I feel about that. It's kind of, you can just kind of keep finding doctors until one finally tells you what you want to hear. But even if he does come back, it's the same as like Hutch. Like he can't come back into the Super Bowl, like, or even if he doesn't come back at all, if nothing else, Gibbs has proven that he can carry this load, and having Gibbs as a weapon for Goff to be to distribute the ball, and then looking at the receivers, they were so even against the Niners this week. You had JMO who led the way with 77 receiving yards, Sammy Ballgame with 64 receiving yards, Amon-Ra St. Brown with 60 yards. So like nobody was above and beyond anyone else, but they all were just spreading the ball so evenly. It's such a beautiful thing to see this offense moving the way it is.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Talking about is Ben Johnson unloading the clip on these meaningless games, and I truly don't even feel like the hook and ladder is a trick play anymore. It truly is like something that it should just be just another wrinkle in a like a play action kind of move. It's like, I guess technically it's like a trick play, but it's not. In my opinion, it's not really like that difficult. It's so simple and so hard to stop. So like I love it. Keep playing it or keep running it. You and I were talking. A few of us were talking last night. Like, excuse me, there is no chance that this team does not do a fake tush push in the next within this season. Like a fake tush push is coming 100%. You can clip it, whatever. Fake tush push. I don't know if it's going to be a fake tush push into a pass like Minnesota did last night, or if it's going to be a fake tush push and Goff fakes like he's going under center, but then just kind of Statue of Liberties the ball back behind to a running back or like a fullback who bounces it outside. Don't know how it's going to happen, but it absolutely will. So keep an eye out for that
Yeah,
one.
absolutely. And I think we were texting about that. It was probably right before I went to bed. I actually had a dream last night that they ran a fake tush push pass. It was against the Bills in my dream, so I take that with a grain of
So
salt.
Super Bowl.
Maybe we're seeing a a little Super Bowl preview there. But yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's got to happen.
So the last thing I'll say before we jump into the defense was the fake tush push successful in the Super Bowl against
Yeah,
the
I think
Bills?
I think I woke up from my dream like right after Amon Ross scored the touchdown on it. So yeah, yeah, it
Okay.
was successful. So book that.
Yes, book that. Put your mortgage on. Do whatever you have to do. Ben Johnson, I know you're a listener. It's right there. Let's go ahead
Yes,
and get
sir.
that done. So, um, okay, let's jump over to the defensive side. I'll start with that. I mean, just in my notes, I just have yikes. The defense. I mean, and I know they're debilitated, and over the next few weeks, they're going to be getting healthier and healthier, and get guys back. Each week, you're going to kind of see two or so guys come off the IR and get back into the starting lineup. But a team that is, um, Brock is doing his best. I'm not the biggest Brock believer, so I'm not going to really consider him a weapon. But I had Brock. And Brock got hurt at the end of the game. So you had Josh Dobbs in there. You had a third string running back, a banged up receiving core that's without Brandon Ayuk. Adebo Samuel's been banged up and it just has an all around had a poor season. You lost 405 passing yards to that. And that's just, I mean, horrendous. And I know they got the job done. Say whatever you want. Like, oh, they're getting the job done. They're bending and technically not breaking because we're winning. But like, that is not sustainable. 405 passing yards is absolutely horrendous. Hey, you look at those guys that we let feast against us. You have Ricky Pearsall, the rookie, who has had his spots in the season, but like not somebody that you expect to torture defense. And then Kittle, who obviously is George Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the league. So, and we'll get into kind of what he did to Detroit and what we need to be worried about in segment two. But Ricky had 141, Kittle had 113. It's just it's unacceptable, I think. And you look at the all that bad. There is some good stuff. The rush defense was good. Held the Niners to just 75 rushing yards combined, which is great. They did have 2 picks and 2 fumbles, even if the fumbles didn't end up going our way. But it's not sustainable. This is a team that like we're asking so much of our offense, and yeah, this is one of the best offenses in probably NFL history. But it's asking so much of them against with an offense or going up against an offense that is so bad. Like how is this going to be sustainable?
Yeah, yeah, I'd have to agree there. I do think that the defense got particularly shredded in the first half. I think they settled down nicely in the second half. They were still giving up some yards in the second half, but I do think we got to give some credit to Kyle Shanahan and to Brock Purdy. I thought that their
Yeah,
scheme was much better than I had seen out of the 49ers the last 4 or 5 games. And I think that, Brock played very well, 377 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns. They did a great job of scheming up George Kittle. It seemed like every play action, he was just hitting that middle to deep third crossing route, and he was wide open. So yeah, it's certainly something to clean up because you better believe that Kevin O'Connell and that Vikings team, they were watching Monday
yeah,
Night Football. How do we beat this Lions team? And yeah, if Hawkinson does anything like George Kittle did on Monday night, then we're the Lions are going to be in for some trouble for sure. I do think that in the second half, Kirby came up with 2 massive interceptions. The first one was basically a pitch and catch right from Brock Purdy to Kirby. I think I probably could have caught that one, but the second interception was particularly impressive for me. Kirby playing center field. It's really awesome if you break down that play. He does not take a single step for probably the first 2 or 3 seconds of that play, and he's really just analyzing Brock Purdy and reading his eyes, playing that center field, and then he broke on that ball, literally the perfect timing. And so that, I mean, it was extremely impressive to me. And those 2 interceptions, they were pretty much the difference in that second half, giving the Lions more momentum. And of course, we know they ripped off 18 points in the third quarter there. So yeah, they came up big. We'll talk about it in the Vikings preview, but I think a big thing for me is going to be getting takeaways as well and taking care of the ball on that offensive side. But I do love what I saw from the defensive line. Just shutting down the Niners run game. The Niners are known for being a run first team. They held Garendo to just 34 yards. I think Brock and Debo probably contributed another 30 or so, but so it's not all bad. I do think that yeah, you have to somehow find a way to clean up this passing D, at least a little bit, because I'll talk about it in the Vikings preview, but they are nearly last in the league in that category.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Curb is an absolute dog, and shout out to Kirby Joseph, who obviously he kind of narrowed it down to Stafford's comments. What was it last year or 2 years ago about Kirby Joseph being a dirty player? And when you look at it, I think he has not been if he has, it's like once or twice been fined by the NFL for dirty and illegal plays. So it really just a baseless claims by Stafford. But Stafford at the time, it was right around when he was in the Super Bowl, had such a platform, and with his wife with his podcast, and they kind of submerged Kirby Joseph a little bit and gave him this kind of dirty personality or this dirty persona. And he obviously was just snubbed from the Pro Bowl. And you could ask these guys, and most of them are going to be like, I don't give a shit about the Pro Bowl. Like, we got our eyes on the
Mhm.
Super Bowl, and if they are concerned about anything like that, they're probably looking more so at All Pro rather than Pro Bowl. So shout out Kirby for just being snubbed. He has a dog. He's had 2 picks. I think he actually had a third that was called back, if I remember correctly. Um, I mean, he's the heart and soul of this team now. I think for the first half of the season, Brian Branch was playing at an All Pro level, and he has kind of come down to earth a little bit naturally. He was
Mhm.
playing well beyond his abilities, and he was the pride and soul. Around the beginning of the season when Hutch went down, it was Brian Branch. I think Kirby has just absolutely taken that over, and we talk about it on the podcast a lot. Like Kirby Joseph, I don't know if it's maybe it's just the way he looks or like the way he plays or just the fact that like he wasn't a super high draft pick and kind of came out of nowhere. Like everyone, I feel like, and you and I have talked about it, we feel like he's like 33 years old and he's like an old wily veteran. He's 24 years
Yeah.
old. I mean, it's absolutely insane how he still is 100% part of this young core and so good. So absolutely shout out Kirby. He deserves the world. And I know he's poking the bear a little bit this week with he went on his Instagram and posted fuck Stafford and stuff like that. So I just hope he can back it up a little bit. I mean, our secondary is not good enough to be talking shit like that, I think, but Curb definitely is. So shout out Kirby. Um, the only other thing I'll note is that while we did obviously play well against the with our run defense, would it surprise you if I told you Zadarius Smith had 0 tackles in this game, just one QB hit, and he's now gone 3 games with 2 total tackles?
Yeah. You know what? It doesn't surprise me. Just
And as everyone who listens to us on a weekly basis, we love to pull stats and then we do zero looking into it. I actually looked into this one, and it does check out. But I saw people commenting on it on Twitter. A bunch of Brown, I think I don't even know, it might have been Browns fans or even before that because he's had a few different stops with the Vikings and the Packers and such. And a lot of them were saying like, we told you guys, like he kind of towards the end of the season he peters out, and that's just kind of who he is. So I don't think I'm with you. I'm not going to sound the alarm yet,
Mhm.
especially because like we're going up against the Vikings, and like he seems to feast against the NFC North. He seems to really hate the NFC North. Last time we played the Packers, the very first play of the game, he had a sack on Jordan Love. So I expect him to come back big. And if nothing else, I do always see clips of him on the sideline, like talking about, chatting with the team and hyping guys up and just being like a great locker room guy and good veteran leadership. So I'm not going to hit the panic button yet either, but it's something to watch. Everyone, we're watching against this game and the Vikings. We'll get to them in a minute. We're going to need a lot from him. We're going to need him to step it up and alter this game a little bit, especially as we kind of start to get more healthy. Let's see what he really can do. So, anything else on the defensive side before we jump into some news, rumors,
Yeah, I guess
injuries?
just what I mean. One more thing, you talked about Zadarius Smith loving to play against NFC North teams. Well, that's because he's played for 3 of them now. So this is a revenge game for him for sure. I think he's going to be hungry, and I expect him to have certainly a bigger game than he has had in the past 2 or 3 weeks against this Vikings team.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So real quick, I mean, so as we mentioned at the top of the show, we're changing up the cadence a little bit. Technically it was last week, but it was earlier this week with our last time show. We mentioned it as well. We're going to change up the cadence. Normally we had done segment 1 being the review, segment 2 being the preview, segment 3 kind of molded into as we got these numbers of injuries and news updates and stuff. Segment 3 kind of just evolved into an injury update and kind of miscellaneous stuff as we kind of are working our way into the off season, trying to work in a little bit more Detroit sports, talking about the voicemail option that we're going to be trying to roll out for all you listeners and stuff. We're going to change things up a little bit, so we're moving kind of review notes, news, rumors, injuries, kind of into both segment 1 and segment 2 based on the respective games. So for news, rumors, injuries, for still on the review side, we had no injuries, which is kind of a first for for Detroit this entire season, going back until like week 3 or something, which was beautiful. We said it was kind of a meaningless game in a sense. It still, we talked about how it actually did mean a bunch for morality, for just getting out there and playing, and the the revenge game. So able to kind of get that win while also having no injuries was just monumental.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Love to see that. And I guess just the only other real news that I can think of, Pro Bowl selections, and we kind of talked about it a little bit with Kirby's omission, but seven Lions were selected to the Pro Bowl. I believe that's second most in the NFL. Probably,
Hmm.
would have had a few more, barring a couple of injuries as well. I would have to assume, but yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that these are some world class players, and that's what we've really seen all season.
Yeah, you would at least what you can put your mortgage on. At least it would have been 8 because Hutch would have made the Pro Bowl. I
Yep.
mean, there was still an argument that Hutch would like if he was healthy today, like he still would get it. His numbers are still top notch on the defensive line. So like, yeah, you absolutely would have had at least 8 with Hutch being in there. And so, yeah, shout out to those guys. And like we said, we talked about Curb getting the snub. None of these guys actually care about
Right.
this. The NFL Pro Bowl needs a lot of reworking and such. But it's just nice, and these are all mostly fan votes. So we still are America's team, and anyone who thinks otherwise can come
Yes,
take it from
sir.
us.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to hop into grid of the week for last week's game, the Niners game. I'm pretty sure we have the same guy. It's a guy that we've talked about a ton, but he's the difference maker on that defensive side, and really the reason why the Lions won, in my opinion, was Mr. Kirby Joseph. So yeah, two huge interceptions. It had been at least probably 3 games since he'd had an interception, so he was very much due. And yeah, he was a game changer. So yeah, I think it's a unanimous grid of the week for us on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to go to Curb, and not only just because Curb had such a great game. Like you look at like we talked about with the offense. The offense was so balanced. Like not one guy. You could say Gibbs because he got in. I think he had like 46 passing or 46 receiving. Excuse me. And then also had over 100 rushing. So like you could say Gibbs is there. You could say Goff is there as well. But like when a guy like Kirby takes over and puts his imprint in a game so aggressively like he did, you got to give it to the guy. So shout out to Kirby, absolutely deserving of it. As we get into the end of the season, I'm going to try and go back and tally up all of our numbers, see who's got what, see who's leading the way in grid of the weeks and such, to see who's kind of maybe going to be grid of the year for Detroit for us. So stay tuned for that one. Um, Okay, let's move into segment 2. Keep this thing moving right along. Detroit welcomes the Minnesota Vikings for all essential. It's for all executive purposes. Like it's a playoff game. Like this game it means so much. We'll get into that in a minute. But Vikings coming to Detroit. Let's start with guessing the line. Kill. What do you think the line is
Yeah,
right
I
now?
think I think I pretty much have this nailed. I was between Lions -1.5 and Lions -2.5. I think home field advantage. The Lions are the better team in my opinion, even though their defense is a little bit more depleted. I'm going to go with Lions -2.5.
Yeah, so this one's hard because this has jumped around a lot. So it opened at 3.5. I think people saw that and thought the Vikings were the hot team. It got pulled down to Detroit -2.5, and right now it currently sits right in the middle of Detroit
Okay.
-3. So a little bit more on the Detroit side than you think, but I think you're absolutely right. Like Detroit, technically, probably not. Detroit is a better team when all healthy. That's just a fact. Based on how depleted we are, that's going to bring us down a little bit. But then the fact that it's at home, it's at Ford Field, definitely gives us that bump. I have to think if it was in Minnesota, it would have to be, excuse me, the Vikings minus like 1.5, right? We'd have to maybe be dogs.
Yeah, yeah, I think it'd be right around that pick 'em, but Vikings -1. Yeah, I mean these teams are obviously two of the best teams in the entire league. Certainly the two best teams in the NFC. You say what you want about this sucking that a 14-win team is going to be the number 5 seed in a wild card, but there's really no point in complaining about it now. These are the rules. This has never happened before. It'll probably never happen again. But as Dan Campbell says, it really doesn't get any better than this. They are seeing this as an opportunity, not as some begrudgingly, oh, we have to play another game, even though we're a 14-win team. They want to be in this situation. It really doesn't get better than this from the Detroit Lions perspective. So, yeah, it's going to be it's going to be a slugfest for sure. I see a high scoring game. This game, if we haven't already talked about it, it's going to feature the most combined wins that two teams have had playing each other in the history of the NFL. There's never been even two 13-win teams that have ever played each other, let alone two 14-win teams. So this is easily the biggest regular season game that the league has ever seen. The Lions have won 4 out of the last 5 against the Vikings. Of course, they won earlier this year. So, this Vikings team, they're gonna be hungry, and this game means an incredible amount.
Yeah, permission to go there for a second to be the guy with a big dump in his pants and be Debbie
You
Downer
you
real
have
quick.
to. Yep, yep, yep.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Like I know that's what there's so much coach speak about. Like this is where we want to be. This is what football's about. Like I think all that's bullshit. This sucks, dude. Having this much beyond the line for a team like this is we're the best season in franchise history. One of the best seasons we've seen out of so many teams. So many teams have not had a season like this in the last 20 years, if not ever. And to have all of it come down to literally the last game against the hottest team in the NFL in our division, like that just absolutely sucks. Of course, it's like the Lions, like you already mentioned. This is the most combined wins against two, in a matchup in NFL history. Obviously, the winner gets the first round bye and will host the two NFC playoff games. The loser, like you said, gets the 5 seed and has to go on the road visiting either Tampa, LA, or Atlanta, depending on how things shake out. Only 5 teams in NFL history have won a Super Bowl following that route, going, being like the 5 seed, going on the road for their 2 games. You go back to I think it was like the '07 or it was the '05 or '06 Steelers. The Giants were in there. There was a few other guys in
Yeah,
there. So
the
like
Buccaneers,
that
2020.
just, I mean, yeah, yes, they're the COVID year Buccaneers, exactly. I mean, it just absolutely sucks. I want to get, I mean, and everyone's saying that. Yeah, they have to come out and say like, "Oh, this is what we want." Like, and Amon Ra kind of, I think, let slip a little bit. He's like, I mean, this kind of does suck. They should think about reseeding for the playoffs like the NPA does. But I think it's the only human nature to have those thoughts every now and again, and then, like you said, just get over it and power through and take care of the ball. So that was my minute to go there. I will say, like you said, it is at home. Um, the Vikings are only NFC North team that hasn't beat us at Ford Field under the Dan Campbell era,
Wow.
so they're still they're like you said, they're going to be hungry. We're 4 out of the last 5. There's so much on the line here. They're so hot. It's crazy. I mean, it does not get any. You're right. It doesn't, as an NFL fan, like maybe not of one of these two fan bases, it doesn't get any better than
Yeah,
this.
yeah, and I think obviously as a massive fan, I might not make it through the game. I don't know if I'm going to survive it. But yeah, it's going to be awesome, and I think if we jump into, the offensive side of things, um the Vikes have a great defense overall. Well, I mean, they rank 16 overall. They have a fantastic run defense. They're second in the league. I think that for the Lions, establishing the run and probably more important than just establishing the run is winning time of possession. I think that's so crucial. The Vikes only give up 88 yards on the ground to opposing teams. I really think that the time of possession is going to be critical in this game. The less time that the Vikings offense has the ball, that means less points, right? That's literally football 101. So yeah, I think that if the Lions can establish the run, of course that opens up play action pass too. I'll talk about the passing game for the Lions. But yeah, I think first and foremost you got to establish the run, and I do expect Gibbs to have, we need him to have a big game. It's going to be tough sledding though.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you recall back the last time we played Minnesota at Minnesota. We start off very slow. It kind of
Hmm.
was like the start of that, like everyone noticing that Detroit likes to start unfortunately slow and then come back in the second quarter. We had the 3 and out, and then we had a 3 and out. We went for it on fourth down and gave up the ball on the 30-yard line. And we quickly down
Yeah.
14-0. You cannot come out that slow right now with against this team with the defense. I mean, that would just be like the Bills game all over again. Like the defense not going to be able to get many stops. So the offense cannot come out slow. They need to come out firing. The one thing I will say though, like it is, and I don't know if this is good for us because it's proven, or if like it's bad for us because Brian Flores and the Vikings are definitely aware of it, and they're gonna try and like mix things up. But Minnesota loves to blitz. Brian Flores is one of the it brings up pressure, pretty much more than like any other team. And Goff, surprisingly, every time he plays Brian Flores, he's so calm under
Hmm.
pressure that I think he's gonna be kind of right in his element. Goff against his 3 games against Brian Flores, Goff has a 77% passer rate, or excuse me, completion rating, 120 passer rating, 5 touchdowns through the air, 1 rushing touchdown, 0 interceptions, and has scored 30 points per game in his 3 games against Brian
Wow.
Flores. So it's so strange in that like Goff is like he does have this narrative, and we probably feed into a little bit of like he's not necessarily the most clutch guy, and he just kind of does his job and plays really well in Ben Johnson's offense. But like he plays so calm and collective, under this pressure that like Brian Flores, his defense cannot seem to figure it out. So it'll be huge that if Flores does kind of come with his normal stuff, that Goff is able to calmly go through his reads and make the correct decisions. And then you have Grenard, Van Ginkel, and Blake Cashman are all three absolute studs on the defensive side for the Vikings. Blake Cashman, who's their leading tackler, is one of their stars on their defense. He wasn't playing the last time we played them. They're going to have him back this time. So I think we just kind of avoid them at all costs. If you can take care of them, we are in a better position. And then the final thing I'll say on our offense is that the Vikings are the stiffest fourth down defense in the entire league. They do not. I think it's at like 30% the opponents are hitting on fourth down. So we're obviously a team that likes to go for it on fourth down. We already got burned, as I just mentioned, on fourth down in our own red zone last time we played them. So it's going to be a little bit interesting if Dan Campbell sticks to his guns and tries to buck that trend for the Vikings, or if he's going to try and change up the strategy a little bit based on this stiff, stout fourth down
Yeah,
defense.
well, I mean, I certainly expect.
You said they were 28. The Vikes are 28th against
Yes.
pass. Do you have those numbers in front of you? I'm curious as to who's 29 and 30. I have to assume Detroit is right around there as well, right?
Detroit is 31st, and yeah, it's a great transition to our defense.
Oh,
So yeah, the Lions are 31st in the league.
that's
We give up
disgusting.
250 yards per game. Albeit, I think that they give up slightly less passing touchdowns than you would expect with that amount of yards. But yeah, we've seen it. The script for beating the Lions, it's through the air. The Lions have a great run
Yeah.
defense, and their passing defense has just been gashed. So, and it, especially gashed in recent weeks. Just thinking of the Bills game and the Niners game. So, yeah. If you're the Lions defense, you absolutely have to get pressure on Sam Darnold. You need to make him go back into a pumpkin, which we've only seen a few times this year. He's been spectacular, and that's a huge shout
Yeah.
out to not only Sam, it's a shout out to Kevin O'Connell. I do think that
Kevin.
Kevin is, if not the coach of the year, he's certainly one of them. I do think DC's in there as well, but they've been tremendous. But I do think that if you get pressure on him, that is when he is more susceptible to mistakes. I was watching the Vikings Packers game, and it seemed like he was just sitting back in the pocket. He had all the time in the world, and when you're throwing to world class receivers like Jettas and like Jordan Addison, and you give Sam Darnold 4 seconds, 5 seconds in the pocket. I mean, these guys are
They're
going to be
getting
wide
open.
open, and he's going to hit throws because
Yeah.
he's shown that he can make some major league plays. So yeah, you got to get pressure on him, and I think that all starts with the big man up front, and hopefully Zadarius Smith. Hopefully we see a sack or two out of him.
Yeah, it does start with those guys up front because the Vikings love to go play action. Like I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think they're like if we're number one in play action rates, had to be number two. Like they do it just as much as we
Mhm.
do. And our rush defense, like you just mentioned, is although injured, still pretty stout. I don't know if we actually still have our not allowing a 100-yard rusher. I believe we still do throughout the season, but let's just not fall for that play action. Let's have trust in our big men up front to shut the run down and not fall for the play action. If they pull out in the play action, we'll be ready for the pass. If they don't allow and allow our and trust our big guys up front to stop that run and not crash on it and let the guys up over top of us. You mentioned they got Jordan Addison, you got JJ, Jalen Naylor is having quietly a
Oh yeah.
fantastic year over the top. He's kind of become their deep ball guy. Addison has as well, but Jalen Naylor has been fantastic, so we're gonna have to be real careful with allowing him getting over the top. And then obviously they didn't have T.J. Hawkinson the last time we played them, and Hawk has been. He's been as good as he's been. Like he's Hawk. He's just as good, in my opinion, as Sam Laporta. And we just saw, as we mentioned in segment one, how George Kittle kind of destroyed the Lions doing the middle depth cross routes and was wide open. I'm afraid that Hawk's going to have a great game, and it might come down to a lot of bend don't break kind of things against this team because they're gonna score and they're gonna have those plays are gonna happen. So it'll be really interesting. The over. Let's do another thing real quick. What do you think the over under is for this game? Because we just talked about the defenses struggling in the air. What do you think the over under
Yeah,
is?
it's high. I think the over under has been high for Lions games, just because that
Yeah.
they're giving up points, and they're obviously the best at scoring points in the entire league. I think this over under has to be over 55. I'd probably guess maybe 55 and a half or 56 and a half. I expect quite a few points in this game.
Yeah, it's right on at 56.5. So I mean, it's you look at Detroit. We scored the last like 4 weeks. We've scored I think 40 a game or something like that. So yeah, it'll be an absolute shootout, and which is unfortunate that like it may come down to a few of those stealing possessions where you go for it on fourth down and you get it, or you have a fake punt or something, and that's going to play to the Vikings because like I said, they have such a great fourth down defense. So it'll be interesting. I don't really have anything else on the defensive side. It's like you said, Sam Darnold is similar to Jared Goff in that you give him time and you let him do what he does. He's probably going to beat you, although he does make a few more mistakes. You just have
Mhm.
to force him into making those mistakes, and we'll
Yeah,
be
you got to
okay.
win the turnover battle. I'm glad you mentioned that. That was probably going to be my last point. Is yeah, the turnover battle. I think every possession in this game is going to be extremely key. So if
Yeah.
you can force a few punts and more importantly force a few turnovers, I think the Lions have a fantastic shot at winning this game. And I think just one more thing, you mentioned that it might come down to a kick. I do give the edge to the Lions special teams unit over the Vikings. I
Hmm.
think the Vikings have a rookie kicker. He's okay. He's certainly no slouch, but he is a rookie, and I've seen him miss some kicks this year. So yeah, I mean, if it comes down to a last minute kick, I would certainly rather have Jake Bates back there than the Vikes rookie.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So, only other thing, we kind of just miscellaneous injury stuff as we kind of relates to this game here. So the kind of final it was an interesting 3 weeks in which we were really injury depleted, and we signed Quan Alexander and Jamal Adams. Both, I think, kind of came in, and I don't have their numbers right here, but they both came in and played pretty well. I think they each had at least a half a sack and at least took pressure off a few guys and opened a few guys other up. We released Quan Alexander. I think that was last week or the week before. We just this past week
Mhm.
released Jamal Adams. Kind of surprised by that. The Quan thing, he wasn't performing as well. I thought Jamal was fine to keep on the roster and like just send him out there as blitz boy on a third down or something. So kind of surprising there, but as we start to get more and more healthy, we need those roster spots. So the Lions released Jamal Adams. Um, he, like I said, performed admirably. Alex Anzalone is starting to practice now. His window was opened up this past week. It was quoted that he has a realistic chance to play on Sunday night just because he is so vital. He's got that plate in his forearm now. I think he's leaning towards not
Mhm.
playing, holding him out. I think that they asked him about it. And he was like, I mean, I'm just asking myself if I played and got hurt again and had to miss a Super Bowl chance or something like that, I would just never forgive myself. So I think just because it's not like an elimination game, it'll be a lot harder. But like I'm pretty sure he's leaning towards being out on that defensive side, which will hurt. But at least we can continue to get him back to full strength. And then the other guy is Khalif Raymond. Clay Freeman's practice window was opened up last week, so he's now logged 2 full practices, or excuse me, 2 full weeks of practices, and he's tracking on playing. So I think we'll get that dangerous return man back. And who knows? I would assume he's going to be kind of back to full condition with 2 full weeks of practice. So that could be where we steal a possession with we kind of earn and win the field position battle there, or steal a point or something based on Khalif Raymond's abilities. So exciting to get him back into the fold for the Lions
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Getting Leaf back would be so huge. The last time that he played the Vikings, he had a huge game. Scored at least one touchdown, a couple huge plays. And I was seeing a stat on Twitter that the Vikings, they ran a lot of zone coverage, but when they ran man against the Lions earlier this season in Minneapolis, the Jared Goff's go-to was Khalif Raymond in those crossing routes, and we've seen it. He does have elite speed, especially for a guy who's essentially your wide receiver three or wide receiver four. And so, yeah, I mean, having him back there returning punts, he's very sure-handed. He's dangerous. We saw what
Hmm.
he could do, in that Titans game with multiple touchdowns. So yeah, getting him back will be a tremendous lift, if nothing else, to the Lions special teams unit, but certainly to the offense as well.
Yeah. Um, okay. So predictive. Who you got? You got a prediction for good of the week going against the Vikings?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's Sun God. He's had a string of really good games. I can say that being a Amon-Ra St. Brown owner in fantasy football helped me win a championship. No humble brag there, but I do think that this is a game where like you really lean on the passing game here, and if it's not Jared Goff, of course Jared Goff's the playmaker, right? But I do think that Sun God is going to have a particularly huge game, and so he's going to be my predictive grid of the week.
Yeah, I like that. Hey, real quick, shout out to you winning our fantasy league. Humble brag. Shout out to our Vikings and our league. Shout out to Zebo. Shout out to the boys. So I like that. I like Son God. I think we're gonna need him. I'm gonna go a little bit more. I think that's a very safe pick. I think that's probably more likely. I'm gonna go a little bit more. We've only been burned on this before, and
Oh
going
boy,
outside the box and
I know where this is
predictive.
going.
I'm gonna go with
Yep.
Zadarius Smith. I think we just talked about him being kind of non-existent the last few weeks. But we talked about him and his presence against the 40 or against the NFC North teams. I think Zadarius Smith is going to come out and put a stamp on this game, and he's going to help us out tremendously. I'm going with Zadarius with a sack and a half and
Maybe a strip sack.
a sack and a half and 2 tackles for
Okay,
loss.
okay. How about maybe a strip
2.5
sack in
tackles
there
for
as
loss.
well?
2.5.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll mark those down. We'll come back next week and see exactly how wrong we were on both of those. We'll wrap. Let's wrap up. Actually, I shouldn't say we wrap up because we still have technically 2 segments left as we get into this new this new cadence here. Segment 3, moving into other Detroit sports news. We're not going to get into the breakdowns like we do for the Lions and talk about every little thing. Just kind of the big things that come up as we get into the off season. Obviously, whatever team is more prevalent and in the headlines and stuff, we'll spend most of our episodes talking about those teams. But for the Pistons, they finally surpassed the win total from last year, which we talked about last week. With they had met it, playing really well. The big news though is that we lost Jaden Ivey in doing so, broken fibula after colliding with Cole Anthony. If you saw the play, it was unfortunate because it was like 7 or so minutes left in the fourth quarter, kind of in an obviously meaningless game. Loose ball. Cole Anthony dove and just happened to kind of take Jaden Ivey's legs out. When I saw the injury, it didn't look that bad in my opinion. Kind of just looked like a collision, kind of sent him off. He was in some obvious pain though. All the players who were around him, they end up stretchering off the court. Got an air cast on that leg immediately, covered it with a
Yeah.
towel. It was real quick. They took him to a local hospital. Turned out broken fibula. Had surgery already. I think that was yesterday morning or the morning before. Very similar to Hutch in that like that's a terrible, gruesome injury. I think Hutch was probably worse just based on. I'm pretty sure if I recall correctly, we saw Hutch's leg do a little bit of a
Yes.
noodle there. But both were very clean. Like it was kind of everyone saying if you're going to break a bone, it's kind of that. There was no ligament damage, no nerve damage, just a clean break. And so initially when the news came out, people were saying a full year out for Jaden Ivey, missing into next year. It's really being reported now that he's going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks. Now the Pistons have a history of doing this. We're going to reevaluate in 3 weeks and give fans optimism, and then 3 weeks come around and they say, okay, yeah, we're going to reevaluate in 2 more weeks, and they just kind of like just
Right.
reevaluate. But there was real hope that he can be back in like the 6 week range. I think that's actually realistic. So shout out Jaden Ivey. You're probably sitting at home or still in the hospital listening to this episode. Shout out to you. You get back stronger, better than ever. Thankfully, it doesn't sound like there's going to be any reason that he can't get back to 100, 110% coming off this. So shout out him. It was in the midst of a career
Yeah.
year. Every statistical category, he was matching and exceeding his numbers from last year. So we'll need him back. But shout out him. Shout out
Yeah.
Pistons.
Absolutely. We love.
Say about the Pistons is I agree with you. Like if he's kind of on the edge of coming back this year, the one thing to note is Detroit still from when we drafted Isaiah Stewart so many years ago, we still have a first round draft pick out and about. It was with the New York Knicks for X many years, and each year it's kind of the conditions on it have gone down. If we make the playoffs, that doesn't count playing games. So if we make the playoffs, that pick goes to
Yep.
Minnesota and the Timberwolves, that first round draft pick. So eventually, I think we have 1 or 2 more years in which it will not convey or it will bounce down to a second round pick or something like that. So it's just something to note. Like if he's on his way coming back and we're right on the edge there, like if he doesn't come back, it's not the end of the world. We can let him get healthy, keep that first round draft pick in a draft that's expected to be extremely strong up top, and continue moving forward on this slow rebuild. So that was the last thing I had to say. You want to jump into some Red Wing
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think that the Wings are finally playing some decently competitive hockey. They've won 3 straight games. Of course, they dropped their first game after Todd McClellan came on, but they've since then won 3 straight. I think they're heating up. They're playing some pretty good hockey right now. They have a huge test actually later today. I think it's 7 p.m. Eastern at Winnipeg. The Jets are one of, if not the best teams in the league right now. So I mean, it's a huge a huge test. Not a game that I expect the Red Wings to win, but of course it's the National Hockey League, and I do think any team could beat any other team on any given day. So maybe the Wings make it four straight, but at any yeah, I do think that the Wings are playing a bit better hockey right now. And have knocked off a couple decent teams. I know they beat the Caps last week, so we'll see. I still think they're have a very low probability of making the playoffs right now, but I mean, you never know if a team could get hot. So it's good to see that they're at least playing a little
Yeah.
bit more competitively.
Yeah, yep. And as our resident hockey and Red Wings guys, I'm happy to hear you say that. I haven't watched. I've watched a little bit, and they just seem like they're playing with a lot more attitude and a lot more effort. After the Lalonde era, I think you kind of ran into a buzzsaw that was the Leafs and Mitch Marner hat trick, the first
Yep.
game of Todd's,
Yeah.
tutelage here. And but since then, I think we've at least just been playing and been fighting and playing in these games. So if nothing else, even if it doesn't kind of equate to actual wins, just the eye test I think is telling you that it was the right move. It was probably overdue, and these boys are probably going to turn it around a little bit as the season continues on here.
Yep.
So okay, that is segment 3. So the final segment 4, is where we will go into any listener voicemails, anything, any recordings, and like we said, we'll kind of listen to them live. One of them will probably listen to it. One of us will probably listen to it beforehand, so we can kind of check it out a little bit. The other one will probably keep in the dark, just so we can get a live reaction to it. That number has just been kind of updated, and it is out there. It'll be in the show notes. That number is 313-306-7939. So go ahead and give that voicemail a call. Leave us your comments, questions, notes, anything relating to Detroit sports, and really anything outside Detroit sports. You want to talk about, the best types of beer. You want to talk about the best types of whiskey. You want to talk about, seasons, holiday, like whatever it is, as long as it's at least relatively exciting, or it has some kind of conversation can have from it. We'll play it on air, and we'll just discuss it here in this segment 4. So again, that's now active. That number again is 313-306-7939. So give that one a call. We'll start incorporating that into segment 4. But that's all we have for our episode today. Again, the Lions beat the Niners 40-34 in a game that probably meant more internally than externally as we get prepared for this upcoming playoff-like game against the Vikings. So a lot to talk about with this past game. We're going to have a lot to talk about next week. We'll have obviously the playoff seeding. We'll have the groundwork for who we're going to be playing, where we're going to be playing, all that stuff. Hopefully, we're talking about it being here in Detroit. If not, we don't care who you are, where you're playing, we'll go to you and we'll beat your ass. So thank you guys for tuning in. Again, if you are watching with us live, thank you for watching us. If you are not, this will be available hopefully 24 hours after the live episode. So every Wednesday, hopefully this one will be out tomorrow, Sunday. If not, it'll be, probably about 36 hours into the next day. You can find it. We'll tweet it out here on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter. And that's all we have for you guys. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll talk to you
Thanks,
next week.
y'all. Let's restore the roar.